So we are very excited to share with you the Evidence for Gender and Education resource, or EGER, which is a new online resource designed to facilitate the use of data and evidence to address gender-related barriers to education globally. And of course, that includes SRGBV. So I'm going to share a quick overview of how we developed the resource and what's included. And then the most exciting part probably is that my colleague Meredith will do a live demo to show you how to navigate the site yourselves and specifically direct you toward information on SRGBV. And then I'll give you just a quick preview of what we're finding related to SRGBV. I want to start by saying that this work reflects an amazing partnership between Echidna Giving and the Girl Center at the Population Council. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Girl Center, we are a global hub of research and thought leadership that generates, synthesizes, and translates evidence to ensure that investments in adolescents and young people, especially girls, are based on rigorous evidence. And next slide. As I mentioned, we've had the pleasure of partnering with Echidna Giving to create EGER. As you may know, Echidna Giving's sole aim as a private funder is to support quality, gender-sensitive education for both girls and boys in lower-income countries. And when we started talking with Echidna Giving about developing this resource, they shared that, like many funders, as well as policymakers, those implementing programs, and researchers, Echidna wants to be sure that the investments they're making are having an impact. So this seems pretty basic and straightforward. Of course, that's what we're all trying to do, but it can be surprisingly difficult to know whether what we're doing is the right thing to do in the right place for the right people. So the motivation of EGER is to drive smarter investments in better evidence-based programming and to build new collaborations to drive progress forward. So even in this webinar, we might be coming at the challenge of SRGBV from different directions, but collectively, our work is focused on expanding opportunities, and core to that vision is making sure that young people have access to high-quality education. So as you all know, and I'll go through this very quickly because I'm sure you're familiar with these issues, there's been enormous progress in expanding access to school globally and achieving gender equality. As of 2015, UNESCO declared that gender parity had been achieved in primary and secondary attainment globally. But as you also know, in many places, gender gaps remain and progress in attainment has stagnated. Levels of literacy and numeracy are low, even among young people who attend primary school. And of course, we know that SRGBV is a widespread experience, as Chrissy shared from her data. And of course, new barriers are emerging, as we've all been alluding to. UNESCO has said that school closures in response to COVID are affecting more than 90% of the student population globally. It's hard to even understand and anticipate the new challenges that are going to emerge for this generation of students. So I think these challenges can feel overwhelming, particularly right now, and it can be hard to know the best approach to addressing them. And as we developed this resource, we spoke with many of you about the challenges that you're facing in the work that you do to address these barriers, including SRGBV, and the questions that you would want to answer with a resource like this. So what we heard from funders was that you want to know how to make the best investments with the greatest impact, especially with so many barriers to tackle and new and emerging barriers. We heard from researchers and those implementing programs that you find it challenging to know who is doing what, where, and what the evidence tells us about what works and for whom. And linked with this, policymakers said that they want data that tell them where the problems are greatest and what the best solutions are to addressing those problems. So taken together, what we heard is that there's really a lack of effective coordination and communication across all these different groups. Okay, so we hope that EGER is part of the solution to address some of these challenges. And the goal, as I've said, is to foster connections between organizations and programs to help identify where needs are greatest, to curate evidence about what works for whom, and to drive smarter investments. So while we know, of course, that no single website can do all of that on its own, we believe that EGER is a critical step on our shared journey to achieving these goals together. So You're probably eager, if you will, to just see the website, and I will hand it over to Meredith in just a minute to walk you through the site and show you how you can learn more about what's happening in the SRGBV space. But first, I want to just quickly give you an overview of the information that's included, because we really would like more input and feedback from all of you. So we focused initially on low and middle income countries, and we're approaching this work from the perspective of 3 core pillars of information. Where are the needs greatest? What is the current practice? And what is the evidence of what works? So first, in terms of the information of where the needs are greatest, we're drawing largely on Sustainable Development Goal indicators. As you know, and as Chrissy kind of alluded to, there are important data gaps, especially when it comes to SRGBV. So we're constrained if we don't know what the problem is and where to address it. It makes it difficult to know how to best meet needs. We've mapped who is doing what and where in global gender and education. And to do that, we've initially focused on organizations that meet 3 criteria. They work in more than 1 country. They have an annual operating budget of about $1 million US, and they work to address gender and education, which we've defined broadly to capture any work that might address gender-related barriers. So that includes SRGBV. It also includes violence at home, for example. So the third pillar of information is evidence of what works, and that evidence comes from existing literature as well as a new systematic review that we're finalizing now. Next slide. So I could spend this entire time talking about how we know about evidence of what works, and there are certainly different views on this. But in terms of existing evidence, what we're doing right now is pulling in results from recent systematic reviews and rating the strength of the evidence for each approach and outcome pair. For example, do programs designed to address SRGBV using different approaches improve absenteeism levels in schools? So we're also addressing gaps in the evidence through a new systematic review that's looking specifically at interventions designed to address gender-related barriers to schooling. The full results from that review will be out in the coming months, but some preliminary findings are included in the site, including findings related to SRGBV. In both cases, the existing evidence and new evidence, we've tried to maintain rigorous standards of evidence, which also means that results from individual studies or the gray literature are not fully represented here, but we're looking forward to engaging in a discussion, and we're already in that discussion, about ways to keep building on this work going forward. So in designing our systematic review, we had to put together a framework outlining perceived gender-related barriers to schooling based on work that has come from many of your organizations. And we're thinking about these perceived barriers in terms of how they impact 3 levels: the community, the school, and the household. Of course, we all know that these levels are very closely related. Chrissy was just talking about thinking about how violence in school and violence at home are connected. So for example, if you look at these different areas at the school level, school-related gender-based violence is the last one on the list. Again, it's connected to things like poor policy and legal environments and pedagogical practices, which are other barriers included here. So I'm happy to turn it over to my colleague Meredith, who's going to walk you through the live site so that you can explore on your own. And as you explore on your own, please bear in mind that the site is live, but it's still a work in progress. We wanted to soft launch the site over the last few weeks to give you a chance to interact with it and share feedback while we continue to add data and fix bugs here and there. And we really would love your input on additional programs or organizations that are missing or incomplete. So with that, I will turn it over to Meredith.
Thanks, Stephanie. If we could go to the next slide really quickly. If you'd like to follow along in our live demonstration, please feel free to enter the URL at the bottom of your screen, www.egerresource.org, into your internet browser, and you can follow along with us. So with that, I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. And I hope everyone can see this pretty well. Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome to EGER, everyone. We're very excited to have you here. As Stephanie mentioned, this resource brings 3 different kinds of data together to provide a 360-degree view of the gender and education space. EGER is composed of 3 distinct yet interconnected parts: the profiles, data visualizations, and our evidence to practice tool. But to get to know the resource better, let's start with the building blocks of EGER, the profiles. Users can find details on over 250 organizations and 500 programs that are currently active in the gender and education space. We are always adding new profiles, so check back often. You can peruse the list of profiles here or search for a specific organization to find out more. The organizational profiles provide general information regarding who this organization is in the gender and education space. This green check next to the organization name means that the information has been verified by the organization itself. If there is no check mark, the profile contains data we've extracted from publicly available websites and materials. From an organization's profile, a user can get a better sense of this organization's areas of work, any partners or funders an organization may collaborate with, background information on this particular organization, and any current girls' education activity this organization is affiliated with. If you'd like to explore a particular program further, click on any of the projects listed here. And this is the program profile. As you can see, similar to the organizational profiles, users can find details on a specific gender and education program, including what topics the program addresses, who the program is targeted towards, and what approaches are being used to reach this program's particular goals. But let's say you'd like to explore what's happening in the gender and education space from a bird's eye view. You can head to our data visualizations page to explore who's doing what and where through our table and map visualizations. Choose the table builder to get a curated list of organizations and programs. If you know what you're looking for, you can create your own table by selecting the parameters here. So you can filter the programs to target specific programs and interests. Or if you'd like to simply explore the database, select one of our preset table questions here on the left. And voila, your table is generated. You can always refine or expand your table by using the Adjust Results menu here. In the future, users will be able to download the results into an Excel or CSV file. While the table provides a great way to explore who's doing what in the gender and education space, perhaps you're more interested in where these activities are being implemented and how that compares to needs on the ground. That's where the map visualization comes in handy. Similar to the table, the map builder allows you to explore a preset map or create your own by filtering programs based on the parameters set here. So if we're interested in school-related gender-based violence, you can scroll down to find that here and select that parameter here. You can also shade your map based on select needs indicators, which use Sustainable Development Indicator data located here. And then you can create your map. Once your map is generated, you can explore the programs and activities taking place in a particular country, region, or at the global level. Each program on the map is represented using a small marker. The green circles with the numbers in the middle are consolidated program markers for programs taking place at the country level. Click on any program marker to find more information about a particular program, as well as a link to its program profile. You can also check out programs taking place at a global level by clicking on the blue circle here. Or if you're more interested in regional level programs, those are represented by the purple circles. The last element of EGER is the evidence to practice tool. This tool takes research evidence from diverse disciplines and distills complex results into simple to use messages on what works in gender and education. In this tool, you can explore which approaches are most effective to achieve a specific outcome, or if you're already using a specific approach and you'd like to see which outcomes that approach affects, you can search the outcomes. So say we'd like to know what approaches work to improve girls' literacy. You can select Increase Literacy from the Outcome drop-down menu, and then View Results. EGER then shows a list of hypothesized approaches, as well as a level of evidence for the association between these approaches and our selected outcome. It also reveals where data are available and the level of evidence disaggregated for girls and for boys. Expanding a row provides links to the research that the evidence is drawn from. You can click on any of the research tiles to see a summary of a particular study. To learn more about EGER, please explore our About page. Here you can learn more about the different aspects of the web portal and how EGER is created. Or if you'd like to get regular EGER updates, head to our Join Us page, where you can join our mailing list or send us suggestions for how we can make this the most useful resource for the gender and education community. And with that, I'll hand it back to Stephanie to share some of our preliminary findings from using EGER.
Thanks, Meredith. So I'll just take 2 minutes to kind of preview for you how we're thinking about and looking at SRGBV in here, and then we really invite you to go in and check out this site and let us know what we're missing and what we can add. Next slide. So, another caveat, which is just to say that, of course, the field is organic and will undoubtedly continue to grow and shift. And we hope that EGER will reflect those changes. But again, that depends on inputs from all of you and from those of us working in the field. But just to give you a quick glimpse, as I mentioned earlier, one of the exciting insights offered by EGER is this understanding of the alignment or the lack of alignment between these 3 core areas. Where are the needs greatest? Where are the programs happening? And where do we have evidence of what works? So let me just give one example from our work on SRGBV. So Meredith showed you that if you use the map builder, you can arrive at this map, which shows the layout of where current practice is in SRGBV. And this reflects organizations that identify programs that they're implementing that are working on school-related gender-based violence. Next slide. And here's the same information in the table view, which Meredith showed you. So if you switch, you can see the list of different programs, the types of programs, and the organization implementing them, as well as the country where they're taking place. So to distill this information a bit, we can see that in the database right now, there are 159 organizations that describe work that is designed to address SRGBV. And there are more than 80 individual programs that are currently active and that are aiming in part to address SRGBV. While there are several funding streams directed at SRGBV, it's hardly a saturated area. But when we look at the evidence side, and part of this is coming from our current ongoing, almost complete systematic review, we know that while the evidence has grown in recent years, those evaluations have not looked at the effects of programs designed to address SRGBV on education outcomes. They have looked at the effects of those programs on violence outcomes. Now, we might decide as a field that it's sufficient to know that programs reduce violence, and certainly that represents progress. And we may suspect from many other types of data that reducing violence will lead to improvements in education in the long term. But right now, what the picture tells us from the evidence to practice tool is that we don't actually know whether these programs designed to address SRGBV are improving education outcomes. And I think it's worth asking ourselves as a field whether that's information we should have, and if so, how to get it, particularly when we look at how many organizations and programs are currently active in this space. So as Meredith showed you on the program side, there are a lot of ways to drill down to get more information. You can customize these tables and the map any way that suits your interests and needs. Next slide. So if you refine the programs to get more information about what the approaches are, we see that, for example, of the 81 SRGBV programs, 12 are programs that work with school personnel, and 3 of those programs are taking place in sub-Saharan Africa. And on the organization side, of the 159 organizations working to address SRGBV, 78 of those are in part undertaking networking activities, and 45 of those are taking place in sub-Saharan Africa. So again, we invite you to check out this resource, explore it yourselves, and please share feedback. There's information on how to do that on the Join Us page that Meredith showed you, or of course, you can reach out to us directly. And I'll just end by saying that we're working to synthesize all this valuable data across the needs, practice, and evidence spaces to share recommendations on how to accelerate progress in the future to improve gender equality in education. So toward that end, we'll be releasing a 2020 Gender and Education Roadmap this fall that will identify specific gaps and opportunities for investment. But we have this lead up period right now of several months to open up to feedback and input from all of you to make sure that this resource is as valuable as possible and that the way that we're characterizing and describing these gaps and opportunities aligns with how you see progress in the field. So again, we invite your input and feedback.